over. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So as was mentioned, my name is Tracy. I'm with MRB Group. And we're here to talk about the Downtown Business Assistance Fund that is funded by the DRI. Our agenda tonight is I'll introduce you to some of the folks you might run into over the course of this process. We'll talk about the program itself. We'll talk about the application process. We'll go through the whole project development piece, which is unfortunately more complicated than you might be used to, but it is the key to actually getting the funding. And then we'll talk a little bit, really briefly, about the different agreements and implementation factors that you'll need to go through, and finally, project completion and compliance. The spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. The PowerPoint that you're seeing today, I will share with Barb, and we'll get it up on the DRI website. So you can use it in the future as a resource. Some of these slides have a lot of text. I promise you, I'm not just going to read the slides to you. Just know that if you miss something, the slides will be available. The administration is a partnership with the city, but also MRB Group and our subconsultant Flatley Reed. Myself, I'm the project manager, so I'm an initial point of contact during especially the application phase, and I've been working on a lot of the paperwork. Grace on my team will help to coordinate the application process and do some of the review, and she just also helps to put materials together. And then finally, Drew is with Flatley Reed. You might also run into Michelle from Flatley Reed. They're the environmental firm that will be doing a lot of the project development work with you. So it is likely that you'll run into Drew if you're awarded funding, because they're the ones who will walk you through or provide a lot of the technical assistance in the environmental checklist and getting your scope of work developed and the bidding process. So I imagine you will see Drew and his colleagues as well if you're awarded funding. There's a steering and scoring committee for this program specifically. These are the folks who are part of that committee. The mayor is not able to be on the scoring committee, but essentially the two committees are one and the same other than that one adjustment. That's just a requirement from the state. It avoids appearances of conflict of interest to not have any elected officials on the scoring committee, but still very much want the mayor involved in the process and making sure that the program moves along smoothly. So thank you to all these folks for the time that you're spending and for helping to move this along and reviewing all these documents that I'm sending you. Any questions before I move on about who's involved at this point in terms of administering the program? No? Okay. So now we're just going to get into the actual program overview. What we're trying to do here and what the program is intended to do is meet the objectives of the overarching Downtown Revitalization Initiative. This plan was developed through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over the last couple of years. And so we want to make sure that we're advancing those goals with this fund. And so what you see up here are some of the ones that are some of the goals from that process that are specific to this program, including attracting residents and visitors to the downtown area, preserving the historic character of the downtown, and empowering local businesses to creating opportunities for entrepreneurs to create jobs and economic vibrancy in the downtown. Who is eligible? You need to be located in the DRI boundary. If you go to the DRI website, which is down here on this slide, it's a link. When the PDF is up, you can click it. It's also oneidacity.ny.gov/DRI. You can actually click through to a Google map essentially with this outline, so you can scroll in and out to figure out if you're in the district. But only buildings within the district can utilize the funding. It can be businesses, building owners, nonprofits. It can't be municipal. It can't be a religious affiliated organization or a membership organization, which I think is on another slide. But the other key factor beyond being within the district is that you have to be current on all of your municipal taxes and fees, including your utility payments and all of those things. Those are very small letters. So what you can do, this is a reimbursement grant. So you're going to have to do the project, and then you'll be reimbursed the grant funding that you're awarded. You can do interior and exterior renovations or leasehold improvements. If you're doing leasehold improvements, your landlord does have to sign off, because we clearly don't, we need to make sure that your landlord is cool with you changing their building if you're not actually the building owner. So we need to have the building owner's buy-in if you are not the building owner. But yes, so beyond that, you can do interior and exterior improvements. That could be commercial, building out a commercial space, doing facade work, so updating or doing like repointing of bricks or putting on an awning or updating windows. It could also be residential in a mixed-use building. We would not do, this program is not intended for fully residential buildings, but it could be residential units in a mixed-use building. You can also do permanent signage, and small businesses can apply for funding for permanent machinery and equipment. So that's going to be things like larger pieces of equipment, whether it's manufacturing or larger pieces of kitchen equipment, basically things that are kind of hardwired into the building. We're not going to be looking at like computers and software and printers. Maybe a really big 3D printer would be okay, but nothing that can really just like be picked up and carried out. We're looking at major coolers, major pieces of equipment. Everything has to comply with local design guidelines and standards, as well as New York State Building Code. So basically all of the things you have to comply with in a normal construction project, you also have to comply with here. Plus a few other things. Sorry. What you can't do site work or ancillary activities. So that means like septics, laterals, grading, parking, sidewalks, freestanding signs, anything like that. You can't do general maintenance and repairs. So if it's something that it's not really an improvement to the building, it's just a thing that needs to happen. That's not really what this program is made for. We can't do small handheld equipment, like I was just saying, computers, printers, point of sale machines and systems, cutlery, hand tools, like those kinds of things. And finally, what you can't do is say, oh, I'm gonna buy the building materials and do the work myself. Or my contractor is gonna upcharge me for the material, so I'm gonna buy the materials directly. Everything needs to go through the contractor. They don't really wanna be working through reimbursements for like Home Depot receipts. It's just not really amenable to the program, and the state doesn't really like to do it, so that's no longer allowed. Renovation materials need to come through the contractor and be part of those bids. Questions on what you can and can't do with the money? Great. So how much? You can apply for up to $100,000 per building, and the funds can cover 50%, up to 50% of your project cost. You can combine kind of four categories of expenditures. Renovations, you can apply for between $15,000 and $75,000. Signage, you can apply for between $3,000 and $15,000. Machinery and equipment, you can apply for between $5,000 and $50,000. And soft costs can be up to 18% of your total award. If you're a small business and you commit to completing 4 hours of approved training, you can actually get that percentage up to 75%. So the grant would reimburse 75% of the total project cost up to $100,000, and you would only have to commit to the 25%. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it is an opportunity for small businesses to get a little bit more and to maximize the program. And as was mentioned, there's $540,000 total. So, we could do anywhere between, I would anticipate we'll probably end up funding 10 to 15 projects depending on what comes in. Program is not ideal for really small projects just because of the work that goes into getting it. If you're not looking at about a $20,000 award or a $20,000 project, it's probably not going to be worthwhile. So start thinking about what you can combine into a single project to make this a worthwhile program for you. And then just a few terms. I'm going to use acronyms because I can't help myself, so I'm going to tell you what they are now. DRI is Downtown Revitalization Initiative. That's the funding source where this money is coming from. BAF is the Business Assistance Fund, which is this program in general. You'll see LPA, which is Local Program Administer. That's the city of Oneida. They are the ones who are the recipient of the funding, and they are the overarching administrator of it. Program is the BAF and the folks who are facilitating that process. So that consists of the city, us, the consultant team, and our state representatives who are working with us. So if you see program, it means one of us is going to ask you things. Like one of us is going to be involved in working with you. And project is your actual project. It's your set of expenditures on your building or your commercial space or whatnot that makes up what you're asking for grant funding for. Generally speaking, I would recommend making one project, incorporating everything that you want to do. Otherwise, you have to go through this environmental review process multiple times, and so I would recommend applying once. And then you can still phase that out, and we'll talk a little bit about the reimbursement process and how that becomes more possible if it's a cash flow problem, but I would say do one project because you don't want to go through this process twice. I promise. So those are, we call them 501c6s. They're organizations that get their revenue from membership, and they serve a membership specifically. So this might be like a veterans organization, or it might be like a chamber of commerce. Okay. It's an organization that is specifically intended to serve a specific membership group, or like an Elks Lodge.
Right. That's not their
that would not
eligible?
be eligible.
Huh, okay.
Depending on who owns the building too. Sometimes you'll find these organizations have a nonprofit that own the building, and sometimes you can make it work, but generally speaking, we're not going to be looking at, because they're not public-facing buildings.
Gotcha.
A membership organization isn't a public-facing building, so we would just need to kind of figure out who the main beneficiary is. I don't see why. I don't see why not. I would have to verify that, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would preclude that, because it is a mechanical system of the building at that point. It might not be the best source of funding for that, but I don't see why it couldn't. I would have to confirm though. I'll confirm.